Hey songwriters, this is Dean. Welcome back to the studio, and today I'm really pumped because I'm gonna be taking you inside of a client song to show you how I start from scratch and start to build out a song for a paying client in GarageBand. So the first thing that I have a client do is send me what I call a scratch draft, and that is just a rough draft of their song so far with all of the elements they have so far. And that's sometimes a voice and a guitar, maybe there's some drums to it, sometimes it's just a vocal, which was the case with this song. But the one thing that I asked for in that scratch draft is that they do it up against the metronome, because that allows me to use a lot of the tools that I use for song creation and production, but also for editing and mixing later. And so what I had her do is I helped her build out this drum track that went for several minutes, and she just sang up against that drum track, and we're not even keeping that drum track as the final. It just helped her sing in time to the metronome. And so now I have this vocal with the metronome. It's in line, so I'm gonna hit play on it and we can get an idea of what we have so far. I am the famous one. Very nice. So we have a great vocal and we have it to the metronome, which for me as a producer, that means I am ready to go. I'm excited. I have what I need to get started. So the first thing I like to do is try to determine, okay, what's going to be the main underlying melody or baseline melody for this vocal? What's going to fit with this vocal? And so I actually start sometimes with the bass, and I call this bassline writing. And that's where I use one single note to try and match what's happening in the vocal, and then I expand from there. So this is a great technique for those of you who don't really play instruments, or maybe you're new to production. I like to start sometimes, not all the time, with one bass line. It's only one note that matches the vocal. And so with the vocal and the bass, it sounded like this. I am the famous one. All right, so I got a match for that. I feel like it's good. And then I was ready to expand into my first melodic instrument, which was the piano in this case. So I know that I played an F, a C, a G, and a D. So up in these chords, I built an F major, C major, G major to D minor, because I know that's what would fit with this line. And so with those three together, you have I am the famous one. Very nice. So just with those three elements, it's already sounding really good. But once you get to this point, you really feel that need for drums, for the rhythm, for the percussion, because it really helps glue things together, and the entire arrangement really fits better together when you have that drum rhythm. So what I did was I chose a kit that I really liked for the sound of this song and started coming up with a basic drum beat and one that I felt like fit this melody. So that is working really, really good. I really like the way things are fitting together so far. And what I did with this drum beat is I actually wanted it to mimic the lead vocal a little bit. So the da 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 pa boom. Pa-da-da bum ba-da-dum. So I'm listening to that lead vocal as I come up with this drum performance, but you can also use the auto drummer. That's another easy way to get started. So now that we have the main melody and the main rhythm, we're ready to expand on the song. And one of the main things that this client said was, hey, I want this to be big. I want it to be powerful. And one of the ways that I like to do that is by using pads. And so I use the Airways pad. It adds just a bigness, a breathiness, a brightness, a warmth to it. And so what I did was I actually mimicked some of the piano chords, or all of the piano chords, but I gave the Airways just little variations, little different notes here and there. So it's not exactly the same, but it's very close, but they work in a complementary way together. So I'll play it with those elements. So that's definitely working really, really well. And I actually added a second pad, and this one is called Celestial Voices. And I did what's called a static note, or a static chord, where I just held a few notes and I let those go throughout the entirety of this performance. And for most instruments, that would get a little stale, but for this one, it actually is always moving and undulating as you hold that chord. And so you can hear how it just kind of moves around and adds this texture to it that's really cool. So with that, if I bring it into context, sounds like I am the famous one. just adds something that's really nice that I like. So we're moving on down. Next, I really wanted to hear some strings in it. I think that adds to a big arrangement, and I think it would really fit with this. And so I added some cello here. And again, what I did with this cello arrangement is I mimicked the piano, and yet I made slight variations so that between the piano, the pad, and the cello, they're all essentially doing the same thing, but each one has their own unique characteristics, and so they really work well together, and they're not just identical. So with the cello, it sounds like when I had that, I was like, yes, that is really, really good. I like that a lot. And so next I added some electric guitar. Nothing super fancy, but just wanted this kind of repeated melody, something that was rhythmic and melodic at the same time, that wasn't in your face, but again, just added to the bigness of this arrangement. So I came up with this. So I really like what we have so far. So the last element that I added before moving into the second half of this part is I added this big kind of tom, boom, 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 that leads into it. So I used the Warehouse kit. I added some reverb to that kit, and it creates this nice big lead in, which I then use again to go into the next part. It just creates drama and power, makes it big. I think that sounds really cool. So what I did in the second half here is I don't like to have two parts that are identical. I'm kind of like, why do you do it twice over if it's not gonna build and progress? And so what I did was I added an extra guitar, playing some octaves, and then I also added some elements up here, one called splatter tables, which I will play, which sounds a little spacey in and of itself, but when you add it into the mix, it sounds really cool. And then one thing that I did also was added this beautiful melody. And this is something that I'll commonly do, whether it's an original project or for a client. Sometimes I want just this kind of bump, 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 bump going in the background. It just adds energy, it adds dynamic. And so with those in, with our extra guitar in, it sounds like... So I hope that was helpful. You're getting a behind the scenes look at how I start to tackle a project for clients. And if you learned something cool or if you have a question, be sure to leave that in the comments below, and I will catch you in another video.